He's gone by many a name, the Goliath of Gulfstream, the Titan of Tampa, the Phenom of the Fairgrounds. That's right, we're talking about the one, the only, Kingsbarns. My name is Michael Pellerin, aka Horse Guy Mike, but today I will be acting as the Reverend in the First Church of Kingsbarns as we share the good word about our new Derby Savior and spread the gospel of truth, hoping to make converts and believers out of all of you. I'm going to walk you through each of the primary reasons why Kingsbarns should be your top choice in this year's Kentucky Derby. We'll take a look at historical trends and see how he compares to the other top contenders in this year's race.
Praise be!
Praise be.
So with all that said, let's dive right in to the first reason that we think Kingsbarns should be your number one choice, and that's his record. Coming into this race, Kingsbarn is the only horse in this race with an undefeated record, going a perfect 3 for 3 at 3 different tracks. He broke his maiden on January 14th over down at Gulfstream. Very impressive maiden win. He went 1 turn mile, coming from a very fast pace. He broke sharply, sat behind the leaders. He was able to go into that pace, not be on the lead, and then cruise home. I mean, it was a good learning experience for him. And you can see during the race, he ran into traffic trouble. And if he hadn't run into that traffic trouble, he probably would have won a lot easier. But it was a great experience for him to start and break his maiden. In his next out race, he rode an allowance at Tampa, kind of outclassed the field by a lot. He went off at below even money. Won by 7 lengths driving, was never really under any threat by any of those horses. So it was hard to see where he was at. You know, he wasn't facing anyone, and he was lightly raced, never raced as a 2-year-old. And we'll get into that later as we talk about the Curse of Apollo. But his big coming out party was, of course, the Louisiana Derby. We knew going into this race that Kingsbarn had the ability to rate. What did it look like for him to be on the lead? Flavien Prat said that Pletcher told him if the lead was there in the Louisiana Derby to take it. There wasn't a lot of speed entered. We saw that. He broke sharply out of the gate. He broke like a bullet out of a gun and looked around, and Prat looked around, didn't see anyone else taking the lead. So he said, why not? I'll grab it. Set very soft fractions, kind of walked the dog right around the track, and no one pressured him. You saw Jason Road on the inside, had an opportunity. He had previously won on the lead, but for some reason didn't push the pace at all. And so Kingsbarn was absolutely loaded by the time they got around the turn and hit the stretch. No one threatened. He won by open lengths. So it's really hard to determine what this race showed from him. The great thing about the Louisiana Derby is that it's the longest of all the prep races, going 1 mile and 3/16. So it's longer than the Florida Derby. It's longer than the Santa Anita Derby, and really gives you an idea of how this horse is going to perform at that 1.25 miles that the Kentucky Derby is at. Another great thing about the Louisiana Derby is you get that extra week or 2 of rest compared to some of these other races. So it's a great prep with a lot of recent success. We saw Mandaloon, Hot Rod Charlie, Epicenter, Country House. All of these horses coming out of the Louisiana circuit are performing really well in the Derby. Timing-wise, I think the Louisiana Derby is really shaping up to be one of the key prep races moving forward. And Kingsbarn shows that he has the ability to go far, sit off the pace, and be on the pace there. So perfect 3 for 3 record. No other horse in this field can claim that level of success. Even Forte had a 4th place finish back as a 2-year-old. So great, really impressive record here. The other thing we want to look at in our next option is its pedigree. So Kingsbarn is out of Uncle Mo, who won the Derby in 2016 with Nyquist, and he's out of a Tappet mare. So distance is not going to be a limitation here. And that's really key for Kingsbarns, because when you look at a lot of the other major contenders this year, they're out of kind of sprint sires. Forte is out of Violence. Practical Move is out of Practical Joke. Verifying's out of Justified, who's kind of an unproven sire at the classic distance so far. So you're not getting a lot of these, Into Mischiefs, other Uncle Mo's, to really have that pedigree advantage. And I think Kingsbarns being out of Uncle Mo, out of a Tappet mare, $800,000 purchase, there's a lot of high expectations for this horse. And we see that distance limitations are not a factor for him. We talked about how the Louisiana Derby is the longest race so far, and no one was even making up ground. He powered home in that last quarter faster than any horse has powered home in the last quarter in this Derby crop. So the pedigree is really there, wants to go far. We've seen it in every race there. The other thing we talked about a little bit earlier is his running style. Now, Brisnet has different styles, E styles for runners who want to be on the lead, EP styles for those who can sit off the pace, P styles for those who close kind of mid-pack, and S styles for those who close from dead last. Kingsbarn is an EP5, which means he can be kind of mid-pack or close to the lead. And we've seen from the past couple derbies that this has been the key style. I believe in the past 20 years of derby running with traditional winners, so discounting the 2020 COVID year, the EP style is the most successful style of racing. Nyquist, Justify, California Crown, American Pharoah, they all had that EP rating where they don't need the lead, but they're able to sit off of it and have that tactical speed. And Kingsbarns has shown that. He's shown that he can sit off of a fast pace, and he's shown that he can be on the lead setting slow fractions. And we talked about his braking style earlier. He brakes like a rocket. And so he will be in a position to be where he wants to be during this race. Unlike some of the other horses who are having really bad braking problems, Tapit Trice doesn't brake significantly well. Mage, some of these horses, they're having trouble out of the gate, and that's causing them issues. And in a field with 20 horses, braking is going to be incredibly important. We're going to see horses that are going to go to the lead really fast. I believe the two Japanese runners, Dermosota Gake and Continuar, they're going to want that lead. And so he can brake and sit just behind them and let them hit those fat fractions. And we saw last year, there was an incredibly fast time for that derby, which allowed Rich Strike to kind of pick up the pieces. I believe we're going to see a rebound here. A lot of times when something significant happens in a race, like overly fast fractions, those jockeys and those trainers don't want that to repeat this year. So they're going to sit back and say, hey, we don't want to repeat of last year with the pace meltdown. Let's not push it too hard. And it helps that most of the horses in this race from the key contenders are not front runners. The only other significant front runners that we have besides the two Japanese runners are Practical Move and Verifying. The other ones, Forte, Angel of Empire, Tapit Trice, they all like to come from mid-pack or back of the pack and make that one long sustained run. So when you have so many of these horses that make their money coming from mid to behind the pack, there's going to be a lot of traffic problems. There's going to be a lot of horses making big moves on the turn, running into each other. And you're going to want a horse that's already near the lead, out of trouble, that can get that final distance. We've seen it too often in the Derby. All these horses hit the stretch and they just die. They just lose that energy and they get passed by those closers coming down the lane. So you want that horse that's going to be close and tactical near the front. So running style, really great positive for Kingsbarns. Speed figures wise, hasn't looked too impressive, but hasn't looked too negative either. On debut, 74 buyer, followed it up with an 85 buyer, followed that up in the Louisiana Derby with a 95 buyer. That 95 buyer is fairly impressive considering how slow they went. That means he came home really fast, and that fast final time, because time form gave him a 107, which is pretty bad. Brisnet, 95 in the last race, not as good as his debut, which he got a 98 for. Equibase got a 100 last out. So it's hard to determine how he fits from a profile from speed figures because that last race was so slow and because no one pressed him. So 95 with no one pressing him compared to Forte, who also got a 95 in the Florida Derby, who was all out to beat Mage. So if you look at those two, Forte is going to be 3-1 or under, and he was all out for that last 95. Compare that to Kingsbarns, who got a 95 buyer as well, and was essentially under a hand ride for the last quarter mile. So how do you want to factor those speed figures? So that's another really great option going for Kingsbarns. All this kind of ties together into one big thing, and that's his potential. You know what you're getting with all these other horses. They've been racing for a long time. They've raced at multiple tracks everywhere. Kingsbarn's been at 3 different tracks, has never lost, has won 3 races by a combined 13 lengths. You could be getting anything from this horse. Are you willing to take 3-1 on Forte or 6-1 on Tapit Trice when you know what you're getting with them? They're great horses, but their style doesn't really fit with how this Kentucky Derby is shaping up. Or can you take a flyer on a horse who's going to be 15-1, 16-1, who's never lost, has never shown that he's not able to get this distance, and potentially have a huge payday? So those are the primary reasons we want to focus on Kingsbarns as our number 1 horse for the Kentucky Derby. But there are some drawbacks. The biggest one that you might be thinking of is the Curse of Apollo. So horses that don't run at 2 have had historic failures in the Kentucky Derby, going up until Justify broke that curse in 2018, although a lot of people put an asterisk next to his name because there were some issues with Jimson Weed and Bob Baffert. So could Kingsbarns be the first to break the curse of Apollo without that asterisk going next to him? A lot of things are going for Kingsbarns compared to other horses that tried to break the curse of Apollo. He is undefeated. So there was only a couple of horses in recent history that were coming into this race trying to break the curse of Apollo that were undefeated. Justify being one, Curlin, Materiality for Todd Pletcher, very similar horse to Kingsbarns. Both of them were 3 for 3. Both of them were trained by Pletcher. Both of them raced in Florida at some point. Unfortunately, Materiality ran into American Pharaoh, who was a monster. Had a bad break that year. Didn't really get a chance to show his skill. But I think Kingsbarns, has that experience. And one other thing as well, he's had 3 different tracks. So he's at Gulfstream, shipped to Tampa, shipped to Louisiana. Now he's shipping to Churchill. So unlike some other horses, like, for instance, Taba, Kingsbarns has the experience traveling. He has the experience racing different types of horses. He's not racing the same, crop of horses every single time. The other big question mark we have at the time of recording is we don't know who his jockey's going to be. Right now, he's had 3 different jockeys in each of his races. Broke his maiden with Luis Saez, had Antonio Gallardo next out, and then Flavian Pratt won on the Louisiana Derby weekend. But for now, Flavian Pratt is choosing to ride Angel of Empire. So that's the big question mark we have. There are some jockeys who have yet to confirm who they're riding. Someone like Jose Ortiz, perhaps, could be a great option who has those connections with Todd Pletcher. So we will see. Is it a sign that Flavian Pratt decided to choose Angel of Empire instead of Kingsbarns? Perhaps. He's ridden both of them, and he made his choice. So that's one of the big question marks there. Kingsbarns is going to offer a lot of value here. There are some question marks, but again, what we're banking on is that potential. So if you believe in the potential of an undefeated horse with improving speed figures who has the right style to win this race, I think Kingsbarns is a horse for you. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for me. Again, I'm Horse Guy Mike. Follow me on Twitter at Horse Guy Mike. Appreciate it, and good luck on the Derby.
RacingDudes.com is your home for the best free picks for every race, every track across the country. We're ramping up for the 2023 Kentucky Derby, and we want you to join us in the fun. Subscribe to Racing Dudes YouTube channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a single video. Want to make money betting horses? Bet with the Racing Dudes.